Recently, I had a conversation with a friend of mine about the afterlife, reincarnation, heaven or hell, and she was having a hard time accepting these ideas. And the reason that this actually matters is because what we believe obviously has a effect on the decisions that we make in life. For example, if we believe that certain actions have consequences that continue on to our next life, then most likely we're not going to make certain actions and we're going to make certain other actions. So, this is why it matters what we believe. But what happens if we really don't know? Most people don't come back from dying to tell us that, okay, yes, such and such has happened. And still, the people who do have these near death experiences still we don't remain convinced by their reports. So the issue here is what to do and how to make our decisions of about this life when we are uncertain, especially about things such as reincarnation or heaven or hell or an afterlife. And thinking about my conversation with my friend reminded me of a discourse, a story that happened during the time of the Buddha, where a group of lay people, intellectuals, came to the Buddha and they said, "We are not ready to accept the ideas of afterlife or rebirth. Do you still have something to teach us?" And he gave them this following response. He said, "There's these two kinds of people. One will think in the following way: I don't have evidence of an afterlife. I'm gonna reject the ideas of an afterlife, and I believe that this life is all that there is, and I'm going to base my decisions on this belief that there is no afterlife, and the purpose of this life is going to be for my maximum pleasure and enjoyment, because I don't believe that my actions have consequences that continue on into further future lives." And so this person proceeds to live a life that may potentially be ridiculed and criticized by the supposedly wise people in the community. Chances are they will be more egocentric, sense indulgent, and quite materialistic. Then there's the other person who thinks slightly further, and they think in the following way. They say, yes, it's true, I don't know what happens after life. but but suppose that the afterlife is true. Well, in that case, the actions that I make in this life do matter, and as they will have consequences in the future life. And so I'm going to have to make certain decisions based on this idea that my actions have consequences, uh, so that any potential life in the future is to my advantage, so that I don't, make bad karma for myself, so to say. And they consider in the following way. They say, if I'm wrong, if the assumption that there is an afterlife is wrong, then in this life, if I make virtuous decisions and virtuous actions, I will still be praised and respected by the wise people in this community. But if reincarnation or rebirth or an afterlife is right, then I will have um, been fortunate to make this decision twice, because if I if my behavior and my actions were virtuous in accordance with the law of causality, then not only will I be respected and praised by the wise people of the community, but I will also have gained a favorable outcome in the life to come. And so the Buddha compares these two people to gamblers who, when they're faced with uncertainty, they have to consider the possible outcomes and they have to make a wise decision, one that is to their uh, advantage, so that they can lose the least and win the most. That's how a professional investor will make his decisions. That's how somebody who is playing, let's say, a game of poker or blackjack will make their decisions. They have to consider the possibilities, the outcomes, and they have to place their wagers to limit their downside and increase their upside potential. And so, comparing these two people to this kind of gambler, the first person who said that there is no afterlife, I'm just going to live this life to my benefit, to my enjoyment. This first person is like a gambler who has placed his bet in such a way that he has prevented himself from getting any potential favorable outcome in the afterlife, because he lived such a life that didn't consider the causality of it, so that he basically left it up to chance. Maybe his actions were not so good, and maybe he will go to an unfavorable destination. On top of that, because of that belief that he and the actions that he has chosen, he will he also may be ridiculed and criticized by the wise people of his community. So his wager, his bet in this as a gambler was not placed very well, because he has limited his upside potential, and he didn't safeguard himself well from the downside potential. Because if his actions are bad, then there's afterlife after all, then he might go to a worse place than he's coming from. Whereas the second person has made a wiser bet, because he has lived a virtuous life, because he's considered um, the possibility of an afterlife. And he says that if there is an afterlife, so I don't know, but suppose that there is a possibility, and I'm then living a life of virtue is to my greater greatest advantage, because not only will it benefit me in this life by getting respect and praise from the wise people in my community, but it will also have consequences in the future lives where I may have a favorable rebirth, or let's say heavenly destination, something like that. So that's basically the lesson. By the way, the story that I'm referencing is called Apannaka Sutta. You can find it online. It's a really nice discourse given by the Buddha. The logical deductions that he makes are really nice. The analysis of how one belief leads to certain actions or another belief leads to certain actions is really nice in that discourse. I highly recommend it. It's called Apannaka Sutta. So yeah, does it matter what you believe? Absolutely, it matters, because what we believe is going to affect what decisions that we make. And the truth of the matter is that we we know almost nothing as a matter of fact. We know the present moment as a matter of fact, but almost everything else is uncertain. From a mathematical or a logical perspective, it's uncertain. So we have to make educated, not educated guesses, we have to make wise decisions by considering the causal nature of things. Based on what we know, we have to, for example, we see that this world, which seems to be governed by causality, the laws of cause and effect, if this is indeed a law of nature, and then we continue this into the future, and we believe this law of causality, then chances are that it may continue in the future lives as well. So yeah, guys, I hope you found this interesting. Leave me a comment. I'm curious what your thoughts about the afterlife, and how our beliefs influence our actions, and especially about how to make decisions when you're uncertain about what truth is. That's when we have to make these kinds of probabilistic guesses and make decisions to our greatest outcome, or greatest favorable outcome, and limit our downside potential. I'm curious if you've had certain similar thoughts, and you've made some decisions like that for yourself, or you know somebody else who's had. Yeah, leave a comment below. I look forward to reading your responses, and have a great rest of your Monday. Take care. Talk to you soon.